All right, good evening. We're going to call to order the January 14th special call meeting study session for the Sumner County Board of Education. Before we begin, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by our pledge to our flag. Feel free to join me if you would like. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I call to order the special call meeting for the Sumner County Board of Education, January 14th, 2025. Appreciate you guys being willing to reschedule, be a little bit flexible, as there were a couple of things that we were waiting on from the state that we needed to try to get approved, and so it worked out instead of having to call another meeting before next week. So appreciate you all working with us. So item number one is discussion and or action regarding the resolution to transfer of the TCAP building in Portland to the state of Tennessee. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve. Do I have a second? I've got a second. Thank you very much. Dr. Langford?
Yeah, I think they're going to switch it over. I just wanted to run through a few quick things
about it and then see if you have any questions. And I'll be happy to answer those. First off, thanks, as Chairman Daniels mentioned, thanks for your flexibility about last week. One of the things that we hit is it's the big deal to transfer in terms of being in the governor's budget. And one of the things we did is the title company that the state uses, for some reason, had like a weird closure pattern. Like they were out last week. So it made it hard to get everything done that we needed to do. But we're still negotiating, looking for a January 24th closing. All right, so hey, Chris, there it goes. Okay, so I was looking back over last year's budget slide. I thought that this is something as we head in, because really, honestly, y'all, we spent, the group of us today spent about 9 hours working on budget. So, the budget process has started. So, first piece in there is we try to, think about when we build the budget, we'll put the large rocks in first, and then pile it around as you get the most bang for your buck, as we try to do what's best for our kids. But this is what we used as we built our budget last year, which is how do we provide the best pre-K through 12th grade education for all Sumner County students. That we'll have some new foci this year as we work through. We got a principals meeting on Thursday, and we talked to the principals about budget. Skinner and I last week finished our mid-year principal evaluation visits. We did those in groups of 3 principals. So, one of the things we've done we met with them in August, and then my entire cabinet met with principals for strategic planning at the end of September. And then we did another round in groups of 3 in late November, December, and a couple of them finished in January. And then they'll come back in February. So we try to keep kind of a constant dialogue to measure what principals need. I want to give a shout out, it's a little bit outside, so I'm going to quickly do this, but we have a document that we're using now based on the items that we got from principals in strategic planning this summer and then in September that we've been checking off. Mr. Andy Brown, Chris Harrison, some others have been.
Is it capital? Is it maintenance? What is it? And can we do it? And we got a whole list of projects. Our goal by budget is to be able to tell principals like, hey, this is going to happen. This will happen if we have enough money at the end of the year. Because sometimes Andy Brown is really good at stretching his dollars at the end of the year to get the most bang for our buck to get projects done for schools. So we hope to be able to communicate a whole lot more with schools about those things by the time budget comes around. Or sometimes, some things just aren't feasible, or some things are a much longer term project because of the cost or what it involves. Obviously, big, for instance, like next month we'll have the North Sumner, we'll put out to bid the North Sumner Elementary project. That's a project that has to be done in the summer because we need to do it with our kids in the building. So sometimes it's just staging like that. For TCAP Portland, this one is really important. In 2023, Governor Lee put $945.9 million in his budget to update, upgrade, and build new TCAT centers across the state of Tennessee. If you've seen President Trump's economic plan or his plans for schools, there's going to be a significant investment federally in career technical education. Tennessee's probably 10 years ahead of most of the rest of the country. There are really only a couple of states out there that are doing similar things to what Tennessee's done, Colorado, a couple others. We're probably the most advanced in making these investments. But one of the things that happened is TCAP Portland was not included in that run because we actually, Sumner County Schools owns the building. If you remember the origin story of that, it was the old part of it was the vocational building in the old Portland High School. It sat empty for a long time, and then the city of Portland and Sumner County Schools worked together to renovate and update that building, and then we put the TCAP Portland, we opened the TCAP Portland campus. We have our middle college technical program there. We have a one-to-one clinic in there. It's prime location for parking for Friday night football games at Portland High School. So it's important, but the thing is, the TCAP Portland was incredibly well run, and they are running kids during the day and adults during the day and adults at night. Very rarely do you drive by that building where there's not somebody there taking a class. And now, usually, like for instance, our middle college kids up there that get a welding certificate, they almost always get hired a couple weeks before they graduate. Oftentimes, they're already taking on welding jobs even by the time they're seniors in high school. The kids that are in the young adults and adults that are in the TCAP program, there's like I want to say a 12-week, something like that, backlog before you can even get in. So they desperately need more space. So what what Leader Lamberth asked is if we would consider transferring this property to the state of Tennessee, and then they're going to pitch. It should be in the governor's budget this year to have a significant investment in the TCAP Portland campus. Just to give you an idea, right now, if you drive up there, tremendous work has been done, but you're talking about a 60, 70-year-old building that has a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done on the plumbing and electrical infrastructure. We've done a lot of work, but there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be done. So if you think about just for the city of Portland, this is on the main stretch through Portland. This is going to be a game changer for the city of Portland. This is a layout, so you can see, I believe it's right around 36,000 new square feet of space. We will do an MOU that we'll bring to y'all probably in the next little bit once we get the property transferred, that will assure we can continue to have our one-to-one clinic there, that we can continue to have our middle college there, and that we can park there on Friday nights. We would never do anything. Mr. Gregory would come back over the Friday night parking, so I'm going to keep that. But anyway, there's been a lot of back and forth because it doesn't happen a whole lot that entities swap properties between the state and local school systems, but this is one that I think really benefits the school system tremendously. It's a great addition, not just for Sumner County Schools, but for the workforce in Sumner, and definitely in the northern part of the county. I'm happy if you have any questions, Mr. Daniels.
I got one just real quick. If we switch it over, does all the maintenance and upkeep go to the state and not under our supervision?
Maintenance, insurance, it's their building. Ms. Brown's already started. As soon as the property transfers, we will transfer all that over to the state of Tennessee.
District 3, Mr. Lancaster.
Oh, thank you. Never been called District 3 first. Who are the people that are the teachers? Will they still be Sumner County employees? Are they always Sumner? How's that work?
So
staffing.
we have one person there. The principal, Mr. Howell, is the only Sumner County employee. Everybody else is already a TCAT employee.
So this 36,000 will not change that. The state's already currently paying these people, and that won't be a budget.
Right. They'll just expand their services. I think you're going to see TCAT services change in a couple of ways. I think what's going to be great is, we haven't had this conversation with Mr. Garrett yet, but I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a dramatic expansion of what we can do there for high school kids. Because like right now we run TCAT, the middle college at TCAT, We run it as a full-time program. You have to leave your high school and go join that middle program. I think we will have a lot more kids that would participate if it were a half-day program where they could go over and then still be a part of their high school. We haven't done that now because, I mean, like, they basically got welding units that they could put into use, but they don't have the physical space to put them in. So the other thing that I think you're going to see, for instance, right now, Ms. Skinner, Ms. Brown worked to add White House High School's auto teacher retired at Christmas, and Doug Lyles was an amazing guy. Believe it or not, he and his co-worker years ago, they used to fix all the ambulances in Sumner County and save the county about $1 million a year. They did that for years at White House High School. You know, thousands of kids have graduated high school because they were in that program. Mr. Lyles retired at Christmas. The problem when you lose an auto teacher, it's one of the hardest positions to fill. You know, Mr. Lyles told me one time it's because a lot of mechanics make $100,000 a year and spend $150,000. They can't get out of the shop because they got bills to pay. But what we were able to do is put a full-time TCAT employee at White House High School to teach auto, because White House has made the transition to electric vehicles. So they still learn how to change oil and do basic mechanics, but they're also learning, like, they've actually got a Nissan Spark up there, and they've got a partnership with Nissan that they're working through. So those kids are getting real high-tech skills. Well, that's really hard to find, but TCAT can put an employee there. TCAT can pay more than we do, and so they're able to work through a lot of different areas. So I think you're going to see an expansion of TCAT into schools in terms of dual enrollment, but you're also going to see an expansion on that campus.
District 6, Mr. Hollis?
I really like, this is a great idea. I think, I was just clarification or maybe speak to the scenario where it would revert back to Sumner County schools and what that would mean.
I mean, if you ask me, I'm happy if we have a reverter clause. There's a reverter clause in the agreement. If we don't want the reverter clause, you wouldn't break my heart, because that building has a lot of maintenance. But there's a reverter clause in it. So if they stopped using it as a TCAT or they moved on from it, the property would revert back to us. Mr. President, does that?
That's correct. If they ever stop using it for educational purposes, it would revert back to the board.
Ms. Brennan?
Along those lines of the quick claim, so if that were to happen, is there anything that would require us to pay back the state for the investment that they put into the school?
No, there's not.
And then you mentioned that the principal right there is Sumner County Schools. Will that stay the same?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the whole staffing will stay the same?
Yes.
It's just the building
Yeah.
is owned by the state.
I think, like, right now we're running somewhere usually between 24 to 32 students a year through the TCAT facility. We haven't really been able to expand because of just the limited number of class spots. But I think with this expanded space, we'll be able to work with TCAT. TCAT Portland has been a phenomenal partner for us. And I think we'll be able to expand. You know, as Ms. Skinner mentioned before, they're working on a plan to take the walls off high schools. This is just one more cog in that wheel of being able to expand, especially in the northern part of the county, to be able to expand opportunities for our kids.
Just overall, I don't see any downsides to this. Do you see anything that you would see as a potential con?
No, I think it's all good. Yeah, I think it's one of the best deals. I mean, it's such a win-win for Sumner County Schools, for TCAT, for the city of Portland. It's just a great, it just demonstrates how effective government can be when we all work together.
Mr. Lacy?
Thanks, Chairman. Is there an amount of time that it would revert, say if they're not using it for a year, 2 years? Is there an amount of time in the clause?
No, it's whenever, if and when they cease using it for educational purposes, it would then automatically revert back.
I'm on a board advisory committee for one of the TCAT in the area, and man, it's really a great program.
Mm-hmm.
They judge their success if their students graduate and they get a job.
Mm-hmm.
They're really pushing for these kids to get a job. So, I mean, it's a great program.
Yeah, it really, and if you think, like, if you take just cosmetology, you can see that's one of the areas on there that's going to be expanded. If you go out, a lot of our kids can come out of high school almost with their cosmetology hours, but if you put it with this, if you go to a proprietary cosmetology school, it's $15,000, $20,000. This kids come out debt free. It's really, and it's an area. It's one of the things I'm excited to brag about our career coaches. One of the things that we're able to do is in the past, we've had a lot of kids that just went to Vol State because they didn't know what they wanted to do. For probably the entire 50 plus years Vol State's been open. The problem for that is twofold. One, a lot of the kids, it's not the right place for them and they lose their Tennessee Promise money. But then two, it hurts Vol State because they're judged on their completion rate. And this gives us a really good option to be able to advise kids. And when it's expanded and it's hard to tell kids, hey, we want you to go weld and you can start in, April 2027. This will not be a fast process. It takes the state a while to build. But if you look at some of the new TCAP buildings that they're building around the state, like if you just search what's come apart as the governor's program, these buildings are really nice and they're very state of the art. It's exciting.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, I guess my only other question, so I know we're talking about transferring it now, and then we're hoping that it's gonna be in the budget. Do we have like a contingency if like for some reason it's not in the budget or there's something they don't give us, the budget doesn't pass that includes money for this? Does this whole transfer become null and void, or
No,
what happens?
it's going to be scheduled to close end of next week.
Okay.
It would be their property. Budget or no.
So then the hope would just be that in the future budget,
Let me- Let me put it to you this way. If they are willing to take this off of our hands,
Yeah.
they
Oh,
save
yeah.
us potentially hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars of upgrades and renovations. So either way, if they take it and the full project doesn't go immediately into the budget, they will have the ability, they have funding already to do maintenance work and upgrade work that we don't put into TCAT. So I think it's a win for us, but I honestly, I don't want to speak for Leader Lambert, but I find it hard to imagine that this isn't going to be it.
So basically what you're saying is worst case scenario, governor doesn't have any budget, any money in the budget to expand it. We give it to the state. It comes back to us if they don't keep up with it, but from day one, if the air conditioner breaks next year, the state has to fix the air conditioner.
That's right.
All right.
We keep if they don't,
over
if it's
there.
not in the budget,
That's all
we keep the same services, but we don't have to pay for the maintenance, insurance, electricity, utilities, all that.
So, I mean, like worst case scenario, we are status quo with services provided and the state handles the
We're
maintenance.
better than status quo.
Yeah.
Because we lose all the cost and exposure.
Right, okay, thank you.
Mr. Hollis?
Is this strictly for Sumner County students, or can other county students come in here?
Other counties can come in. So TCAP works a little different than like Sumner County schools. It's weird because they overlap. I don't understand fully how it works, but you have like in our area, you got TCAT Springfield, TCAT Portland, and TCAT Hartsville. And then there's some others out in other areas. I'm not sure, Mr. Lacy, which one you're affiliated with, but those are the three main ones that we primarily work with: TCAT Portland and TCAT Hartsville, because TCAT Hartsville reaches into Gallatin and certain parts of Sumner County. And like they put equipment in our schools, like some of our mechatronics equipment and stuff came through grants that are partnerships with us at TCAT. So they take mostly adults on that part of TCAT, high school graduates, into their programs. But the TCAT Portland is primarily like Macon, Sumner, and Robertson County students.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is, I have no idea because there it is. Discussion or action regarding bids for Hendersonville High School baseball building.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, do I have a second? Got a second? Dr. Langford, any?
I'll just run through very quickly a few things. This is the bingo card. I'll be brief. Just a reminder that we have the longest standing city, park, county agreement in the state of Tennessee with the city of Hendersonville. In 1989, Mr. Hyde, and I'm not sure who the parks director and city manager was at that time in Hendersonville, signed an agreement, and since that time, baseball, softball, and soccer have been played at the park in Hendersonville High School, which is fantastic because Hendersonville High School is landlocked. There's no land anywhere around Hendersonville High School except Grace Creek Park that you could do this. And so again, I think I shared this last time, they've wanted to add this building for a long, long time. When the tornado came through last year, it knocked down all the trees. The Corps of Engineers was requiring about an $80,000 survey and some other work just to get them to tell you yes or no whether you could build it. That's a lot to put on a baseball booster club. So I think that this, this is, again, just like the TCAP Portland thing that we just did. I think this is another thing I think we'll probably see. I think there's opportunities to do similar type things with the city of Portland and the city of Gallatin. I'm sure other cities will have some ideas and thoughts too. Portland and Gallatin jump out the most because the city of Gallatin provides a lot of athletic facility services to Gallatin High School. And for instance, like Portland is a phenomenal, city of Portland's a phenomenal partner. And we've got some things like we're going to do some tennis courts at some point, some things like that. So I think that there's the potentiality to take advantage. We're going to have to be in a place where we're going to have to share land, we're going to have to share facilities, different things like that to make it work. They're not making new land. I wanted to run through real briefly. I had some questions last time. I think Mr. Lancaster asked about how this fits with our overall capital budget. So I wanted to kind of run through. If you look at last year's budget, we added $21.5 million, or we budgeted $21.5 million. The commission gave us an additional $5.4 million in August, and then we carried over about $9.5 million from last year from the $15 million we moved. So that gives us a total to budget of about $36.36 million. Okay, so here's kind of some of the numbers that we have committed so far. $20.058 million on the 3 football stadiums. Portland is probably coming up the fastest right now. Hendersonville, they still got some blasting to do. If you're a Hendersonville school board member, you may get an email or two when they blast. They've sent out a lot of communication about when they're blasting and everything, and it's not going to be extensive, but there is a little bit more blasting that has to take place. Beach, there's a lot of dirt work being done. But they've started pouring footers, and if we can keep getting good weather days, unlike last week, you'll start to see a whole lot more. Station Camp track, Gallatin track, Merrill Hyde tennis are out to bid and should be back for our February board meeting. And then we got the final total after the playoffs for our bleacher and restroom rental. All right, North Sumner Elementary will go out to bid in February, and we'll vote on it in March, hopefully. That's the plan. We are in the process of looking at Gallatin High School. If you remember a couple months ago, we talked about this, the Liberty Creek style lights. They're fun because they dance to music. But more importantly for us as a school board, I think, is the fact that, one, if they go off, they come back on immediately. You don't have to wait 20 minutes. They also don't hemorrhage money. When you turn these old lights on, the lights don't last super long, and you might as well just go out in the middle of the field and burn money. They burn electricity like crazy. These are much more energy efficient. And it shows, the city of Gallatin a commitment to athletic facilities like we've seen at others. Hendersonville baseball, we've talked about. Buses, this is 3 new buses. I want to give a shout out. We'll get you to meet our new transportation director. She's new only in the sense that she's new in the title. Tracy is amazing. She's been with us for a long time. She's done every job in transportation that you can conceivably do and knows the roads of Sumner County. On Sunday, when she said the worst roads in Sumner County are devoid of snow and ice, you know that we can go back to school. I put as much confidence in Tracy as I do meteorologists or anybody else. She's really, really good. And this is the number. It's 3 buses. They thought that was the best number for us to purchase this year. Miss Brown, Katie Brown, has shared with you of our window film and door lock projects, and that's continuing to roll. If you have any individual questions, I just ask that you ask her after, because we don't talk about specific schools in a public meeting. We try to allocate about $150,000 a year for furniture, and Miss York in our operations department, she has a priority list and she works through, and sometimes if there's a bigger need, we'll catch that as an extra capital purchase. We're looking at doing some work to upgrade the North Sumner Library while we're up there doing the work this summer. And then HVAC work. We have ongoing needs for HVAC. Station Camp High School, Millersville Elementary, Bethpage Elementary, and then we put another $200,000 in to cover any countywide HVAC issues or concerns that are in. It's always going to be a brush fire. We have thousands of HVAC units. For instance, like right now, I know you've heard some stuff about Westmoreland Middle. We replaced the chiller unit last year. That was a real big expenditure. A lot of times when you replace something like that, you have other things that you then have to go back and fix. And I believe Mr. Johnson can speak to this. I believe Mr. Brown's up looking at that now and evaluating to see what we can do there. Fire panel at Westmoreland Elementary, not very exciting, but good for the security of Westmoreland Elementary. Nannyberry Elevator, that has to be done. It's served its time, and it's time to get the elevator at Nannyberry. Beach High School and White House High School have two buildings, but they were different schools at one point. You know, Beach Annex was the old Hunter Middle School, White House Annex was the old White House Middle School, so they've never had bells, intercoms, anything that have aligned. So, you know, it's always been a problem. You know, if you're a kid coming down from the annex at Beach High School or the annex at White House High School, it's always nice to say that you're late to class because you got out of the other building late, but it's actually true. Sometimes there's a 2 to 3 minute variance, but in terms of safety, we really needed to get the buildings aligned so that when we make an announcement, it goes to both schools instantaneously. So that's been budgeted. Roofing, you will have a number of roofing projects to vote on. We got the bids back, Chris, I think last week, and they're in the process of vetting all those. It may come in under this. They had the top bidder, there were some things that they're investigating to make sure that they can do that. So I put the second bid. This may actually be about $30,000 or $40,000 cheaper, but this covers, if you've gotten emails from Gallatin High School, that's the most expensive project on here. There were quite a few leaks in Gallatin High School. This addresses this addresses those. Howard Elementary, Beach Annex, R.T. Fisher, and another section at Station Camp House. And then paving, again, we have several. The two worst in the county were Merrillhide Magnet and the parking lot here at the central office. We were laughing the other day because when they graded it down before they paved it, it was better than when it was paved. You know, beach, we will probably wait a little bit just because there's going to be so much heavy equipment while they're doing the stadium project. We're going to look to see if we can do some patching and things like that. We'll probably have to catch beach. There's a couple of projects that are pretty on that priority list. There's a part at Gene Brown Elementary, a couple other places that we're looking at. And we've had success when we bid out these projects. We've gotten really good bids the last couple that we put out. So that's been good. White House High School Annex whiteboards, we added that because the annex at White House High School, the whiteboards are not actually whiteboards, they're shower boards, and you have to use Goo Gone and things like that to get the dry erase marker off. We had some of these at Beach Elementary last year in Millersville. We got those.
They're the worst things ever.
Those shower boards, oh, they're terrible. I had one when I taught. Yeah. Yeah. And then Westmoreland High School looking at the same type of and fencing as we had. They were looking at Gallatin for Westmoreland High School. And then Westmoreland, we carried over a balance that we gave them capital money last year. They weren't able to spend it all. We just rolled it into this budget. And then with, you know, a couple of these bigger projects coming back next month, as we know, construction costs are slightly variable. So seeing where Gallatin track, Station Camp track, Merrillhide Tennis, and then the North Sumner Elementary job, we're holding on to $1 million in reserve just for anything or any emergencies that we might hit. That leaves us still, if you pull $1 million out for reserves, that puts another $3.8 million. Should we hit something, an opportunity or a disaster, it puts us in a pretty good position capital-wise to be able to address that. So that's where I wanted to give you, because Hendersonville was kind of the Hendersonville opportunity presented itself as a result of the terrible tornado last year. But it is a way for us, I think, to honor the commitment the city of Hendersonville has made, because they charge us nothing, and they take care of the fields and everything. So it's a good positive for them. And again, to me, it's another reflection of what we can do when we all work together.
Right. Any questions?
Yeah, just one question. So, total capital available for budgeting and then totally committed, does that include the bids coming in February for the tracks and the tennis courts? And
It put our estimates in.
so that is under committed, that those fall into
Yes,
that.
sir.
Okay, so the remaining, it's just waiting for some of these other projects.
Yeah, and that's why we got that $1 million reserve, because what we've done, what Mr. Harris has done a great job of is, you know, we put what we estimate it's going to be. When we get an actual cost, we change that number. So if I show you this slide deck in a month or two, it'll probably be different because, for instance, like on the roofing, it could be $30,000 cheaper.
Okay.
And then we'll try to, you know, we try to squeeze that. You know, we're going to try to, obviously we're going to try not to spend all $3.8 million of that capital because we want to be good stewards of our finances and find the best projects, get the best bang for our buck.
Ms. Brennan?
You've got the numbers that you're showing us here. Does that include the Hendersonville baseball, or will we be pulling that out of the total remaining?
It includes.
Okay. One thing that I didn't notice on our capital projects that I think we've talked about a few times is the kitchen equipment at White House Middle. Is in some.
That comes out of a separate budget. That
Okay.
comes out of school nutrition. They have a separate operational and capital budget, and I'll investigate that. They bought a couple different waves of capital. I thought that White House Middle was in that, so I'll check and see and get you an answer on
It
that.
wasn't the last time I checked.
It was in?
Was not the last time I checked.
Well, my question is, has it been ordered? Because the lead time on some of this is not.
It wasn't slated to be ordered the last time I saw
Okay.
those numbers.
Okay, we'll
That
check with
doesn't
school
mean it
nutrition.
hasn't changed.
We'll check with school nutrition.
All right, all in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, seeing none?
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I have one more
Okay,
question.
sorry.
Is that the vote on the main motion?
It's the only motion.
Okay, all right, just making sure. I have one more question, if
Okay,
you don't
we'll go ahead
mind.
and ask.
And I didn't vote right then. So one of the things I noticed, I was looking at so just a question about the dugout club at Hendersonville High School. I noticed they put out a call for fundraising for this building. Have they raised money for this building that's going to be in addition to what we're approving tonight, or is that going to just, if we're fitting the bill, is that going to free up that money that they've raised for this building? And what's how's that work?
I don't know exactly what their plans are, but there's still a lot of stuff. We're building the building. There's still a lot
Right.
of stuff like nets and equipment and things like that. So
Okay.
there's probably another $70,000 or $80,000 worth of stuff that will go in it. This is the building.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I can speak to that real quick. The turf was completely, when the storm came through like that, when we went through and evaluated it, there were nails, lots of things where the turf is going to have to be completely redone. So the whole infield's going to have to be redone. So I do know
What
that
we're
some.
doing includes that.
No, we're not doing anything with the turf, but I'm
Okay.
saying that's why they're still raising money.
They're raising, I got you.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
they're raising money for that, okay.
Yeah, it was pretty catastrophically damaged. There's a lot of work to be done over there.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Third item on the agenda, discussion or action regarding amendment to the general purpose budget. Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion second? Second. Dr. Langford?
Just this is moving the money into that specific line to cover the Hendersonville baseball building.
All right. What was that? Ms. Brennan?
Dr. Langford is also raising the amount because we approved 400,000, but if I read this correctly, we need 520.
The building came in, we estimated 400, the building came in at 480. And then there's other stuff like maintenance, not to do some electrical and stuff like that. That estimate, we put it at about 520. Or whatever that amendment is. Yeah, with these smaller, like we found out with the Westmoreland field house, these smaller, I mean, remember in a commercial project, anything under a couple $1 million is considered small. And the prices are variable. Like if you look at the bids, actual bids, there's quite a bit of variance between those bids. Because a lot of times if it's a commercial contractor, they're gonna make, I think we got a really good bid at the 480 because some of the others were significantly higher. A lot of times if it's a smaller job, they're gonna very much make it worth their while to come in and do it.
Any other questions?
Can we get control back of our, like right now we can't click on stuff. Maybe it's just me.
What's that?
Oh,
It's-
there it is.
Yeah, I don't.
Thank you.
It's because they've got the presentation. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our motion carries. All right, that concludes our special call meeting. All right, I call to order the study session, January 14, 2025, Sumner County Board of Education. All right, first item on the agenda is Human Resource Department presentation.
Got one little thing I want to share with you before I turn it over to Mr. Ott. And that is, Chris, you'll put this up. Mr. Ott is going to give you an overview like he did last year of compensation. I want to commend again Mr. Ott and his team and the committee that he led because we're able to make a historic $29.3 million investment improvement in compensation for our employees. But I wanted, as soon as this comes back up, No, it's still mine.
Okay.
It's okay. Okay. All right. Again, back to our guiding question, how do we provide the best pre-K through 12th grade education for all Sumner County students? As we head into compensation, I want you to understand that, one, with over half speed, Neil, I want to run through our funding real quickly, just a little bit. Not a full-on TISA presentation, I promise. I'll be happy to share that with anybody that wants it later. But I did want to highlight a couple of things just so that you're aware as we start talking about the biggest rocks that we put into the bucket as we're doing our budget. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of times people say, well, you know, a significant amount of your budget goes towards staffing. Well, the thing is that we deliver our service by putting a teacher in front of kids. That's what we do. We teach kids. So our biggest expenditure is going to always be our workforce. But increasingly, you know, I don't think that people appreciate. I want to think, like, I'm trying to think who said this when we had the commission school board tour at Hendersonville High School in Merrill Hyde. The amount of different people that have an impact on the lives of our kids is pretty high. And if you think about that, from custodians to library clerks to cafeteria workers, across the board to maintenance men and women, you know, it's pretty heavy on personnel, because that's what we do. But, you know, so that's going to be the largest rock. But I also want to say is, we also don't want to do things that we can't pay for long term, right? The worst thing we can do is give raises that we can't sustain. And I think we've done a great job as a county, commission and school board, of moving the needle for our people while being very responsible fiscally. And so I just wanted to show you, so 24-25, this is how we were funded. I won't go through all this ones. The largest one, of course, the largest one is what the state of Tennessee gives us, $207,100,717. All right, and then locally last year we got $133,927,161. All right, just to compare, I thought it'd be interesting to compare, go back 10 years and look, just to give you an idea of how education funding has shifted in Tennessee. So whenever you hear somebody say that Tennessee doesn't invest in education, will we always be able to invest more? Absolutely, because we want the best for our kids. But we're looking at, in 2014-15, we had a local investment of $71.9 million, a state investment of $123.7 million. Last year we had a county investment of $133.9 and a state investment of $207. That's a substantial increase, and it's why we're in the position to have the very best, the very great people that we have now, and the facilities that we have. All right, what are the uncertainties, right, as we go into what we want to do for our employees in terms of compensation? We are shifting, I didn't put this in the slide deck, but I'll just share it with you. We are shifting. Last year when we did the county budget, remember we had a tax reappraisal last year, and property values in Sumner County increased by 76%. I'd like to point out, I think that the county side, and Mr. Schoaf would appreciate to point out, we did not do a tax increase, right? What happened is the amount of pennies that we had to allocate came down because the value of each penny went way up. So our tax rate is like $1.42 something now, where it was $2.25. Okay, so that balanced out the revenue with that new tax rate. What we did is we changed the allocation of pennies on the county property tax rate. In the past, we've received 60.87% property tax pennies. Now we receive 50.27%. The county elected to lower our property tax percent and increase dramatically our sales tax percent. All right, so the good news is the sales tax is projecting really strongly, so we should be fine. We'll know for sure. The budget committee of the county commission last night voted to put out in mid-March to late March a resolution with everything, the amount of money that we're going to get conservatively, and then update it as we go if numbers come in better. So I think, last year was a wild year with elections, with property assessment, setting the tax rate. Those are tough years to navigate because there's not that much uncertainty this year like there was last year. But there is uncertainty because Ms. Brown's never had to forecast with this new way of doing business. You also have the fact that we've added thousands of new parcels on property tax. So there's a hope that even though our overall percentage of the property tax goes down, it won't be as much of a hit on the property tax because we've added a lot of new parcels in Sumner County, and those are coming in at, you know, significant rates. I mean, just to give you an example, on the business, on the commercial side, Facebook opening their data centers, that's a $1.5 billion investment. Facebook became, when they opened that first data center, they became the #1 taxpayer in Sumner County. So that gives you an idea of how important it is to draw, especially high-tech industries into the area, because they lift the tax burden off homeowners, because they pay at a 40% rate where we, you know, homeowners pay at a 25% value rate. So it's good for us, but it's going to be a very challenging thing for Ms. Brown and her team to forecast. We are still waiting on state of Tennessee budget decisions, right? When we see the governor's budget in the next few weeks, we'll get a little better picture of what they're planning to do. I've heard really good things from our legislators. I will say, like, you know, to go back a slide or two, you know, that's about, what is that, 77, about an $84 million increase in state funding in 10 years. So I will tell you that they fight to get us more money every year. We're thankful for that, and want to thank them for doing that for us. Here's the biggest, other than just not knowing where we're going to be in the legislature, the biggest question that we have right now is the state, the Department of Education has us coded down 30.7% in economically disadvantaged students. Now, I wish that we actually had 30% less economically disadvantaged students than we had last year. That's not true. We're trying to figure out, used to our school nutrition team code kids as economically disadvantaged based on free and reduced lunch forms. All right, a couple of years ago, the state and feds went to something called direct certification, which takes us out of the equation. We have to turn in paperwork, but then state agencies and federal agencies put them into direct certification. There's obviously something wrong here, because it's off this much almost in every district across Tennessee. For this to be correct, you would have to assume that every school district in the state of Tennessee miscoded data in the exact same way at the exact same time. I can assure you that that doesn't happen. So we're trying to get to the bottom of this. Ms. Collins, that does our data work, has been looking at individual schools and trying to figure. We found a few things. Most likely what this is somewhere between some of the different agencies outside the Department of Education that are responsible for coding data. Their networks aren't communicating with where the state pulls this data to get our numbers. We're going to obviously continue to push, because right now that's about a $2.6 million hit. And that's if that baseline, basically for an economically disadvantaged student, you take 25% of the TISA base. And that's how you calculate how much money we get per economically disadvantaged. If you worked in the medical field, TISA works a lot like medical coding. You code students based on a host of different demographic factors, and they're funded according to that, and the money moves with the kid. So if they go to a different county or they move, we lose that percentage of the money for that year. So, you know, if you look at when we show you a TISA report, you're going to see our attendance enrollment is like 30,341.68. We don't have 0.68 of a kid. It's just they average out the attendance over the course of the year. So those are the biggest uncertainties as we head into our compensation plan. And then just briefly, you won't go through this now, TISA works on a combination of the base, which is what we get for every student in Tennessee. There are weights where they provide additional funds for kids with economically disadvantaged kids that live in areas that are economically disadvantaged, and then unique learning needs. Everything from dyslexia to different special education services, EL, different things like that. We get different funding amounts for each of those kids. Outcomes funding, there's incentives built into TISA. It's still a little fuzzy because they're still working out all these as we fly the plane. But we get like currently, I think we've received we usually get a check in December and then another one in January. Last year we got about 3.8 million, I believe. We got 2.7 million in December. The data comes in differently that they use. So for instance, like high school graduation, if you see how the state judges us on high school graduation, they lag a year. And that's because they give us until August to get kids graduated. So that data comes in later than like your testing data and things like that. So they typically do a December outcomes check and then a January outcome check. So we'll have by February, mid-February, late February, we'll know what our total outcomes funding is, and that's what's generated by each individual school by their performance. And then direct funding are things like number of third graders, number of kids taking the ACT, things where they just pay a flat rate. So that's TISA funding in a nutshell. I'll be happy if you'd like. Probably the best advice I give you is if you want to understand all the ins and outs of TISA, we'll just schedule a time and we'll work you through it. And it's actually easier to understand than the way BEP was, but it's still fairly complex. With that, do y'all have any questions about funding?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so, you know, we were talking about the uncertainties, the fluctuation in setting a tax rate, and it's not my understanding of a tax neutral rate and all that, whatever those changes are, but our maintenance of effort is going to stay the same, right? They're not, by law, they can't reduce the amount of money we get locally.
Right.
So I think, what was that, 133 million? We're guaranteed by law to get that.
Yes.
To get that back.
133.9.
Now, the state, could they reduce funding? I mean, that's not maintenance of effort. That's, I mean, I'm not saying, well, I'm just curious. Like, you know, could they say, hey, we're gonna, you know.
There's a bunch of different rules about that.
I'd have to get you very specifics because we've never had that. But there is a way that they can reduce it if your enrollment drops, but it has to be more than not just 1 year. And so they held harmless also with certain things. So it's possible, but I don't think it's
not
likely
probable.
that that's going to happen to us.
It's not likely for a suburban Nashville district to ever decline enough in population to trigger those
Yeah,
things.
but there have been some counties that have lost state
So
money
they-
because of enrollment.
So the trend is they give us something a little more every year. I mean, it's been, you know, so we can expect maybe what we got last year plus a little more maybe, you know, right? So, but MOE is going to stay the same.
But we're also concerned about the reduction in our the poverty rate that they're losing.
Okay.
So that is a very, very big concern
Well-
about a reduction because of that.
And that's not just us, that's
Okay.
every school district. Every superintendent that I talk to is watching this economically, because probably what's gonna happen is if they don't adjust it, it's gonna wash out what we get in increase. Now, I do think like, you know, talking to our legislators, they're gonna push hard. You know, we've got 2 years to get to the 50,000 mark. I don't wanna step on Mr. Ott's toes, I'll let him talk about that in just a minute. But you know, they're going to put money in because they want to continue to move the needle also. It's just a question, obviously, of what they feel comfortable putting in and then how that gets allocated. When we get closer to budget, I'll walk you through the one confusing thing that got me last year on the TISA sheet is you're going to look at that TISA funding formula sheet the first time, and you're going to think we're going to get an increase of like $60 million from the state. It's not going to actually be that because it's then weighted by local versus state contribution. And then last year, what I'm hopeful will happen is last year they adjusted between March and April. This is another uncertainty that I put up there. They updated the amount that local contribution was. And so like it went up 0.4 of a point for us, but that was $1.3 million, I believe, that we lost. Hopefully that won't hit us this year, but there's just some, TISA is still relatively new. Some things have been held harmless and those are rolling off like economically disadvantaged students. So there's just going to be some things we're going to have to monitor, and we'll bring those to your attention over the spring as we find out about it. All right, well, let me introduce, Mr. Dennis, it's good with you. I'll introduce Mr. Ott. We've tried to do this for each of our department heads as they come up. Mr. Ott was born in Wisconsin and raised in Iowa on a dairy farm. He graduated from the University of Iowa in business with an economics minor. He started his career in state government with state liquor stores within the store operations division, which included staffing, employee relations, labor negotiations, and bourbon allocations. That last one's not true. That's the lie of the three facts. 1988, he moved to San Diego, California to help a friend open wine stores in La Jolla and Del Mar. La Jolla, yeah, that'd be better. While there, he took a job with Marriott Hotels and HR at the San Diego Marina. Mr. Ott's career in hospitality and timeshare spanned 15 years, 9 states, and 11 moves, including Orlando, Kansas City, New Orleans, and El Paso, in various roles, including Director of Human Resources, Director of Operations, Director of Food and Beverage, and Director of HR Organizational Effectiveness and New Product Development. He left hospitality to join Sumner County Schools in 2003 until 2010 as the Director of Human Resources. Somewhere around the time that we announced Dale Phillips was going to be the superintendent, Craig left and left only Jeremy and Norma with Dr. Phillips. In 2010, he left for Metro Nashville Public Schools in a variety of roles, including Director of Human Resources. In 2017, Mr. Ott was asked to lead a team to build out a new financial, purchasing, and human resources operating system for Metro Nashville Public Schools and Metro Government Finance. After the system went live, Mr. Ott was asked to stay and lead the payroll department responsible for MMPS and Metro Government active and retired employees. He retired from Metro in October 2021, and Dr. Phillips asked Mr. Ott if he would like to return to Sumner County Schools in February of 22. Mr. Ott leads a team of 13 talented employees responsible for recruiting and staffing, including teachers, classified substitutes, non-faculty, employee handbooks, training, badges, background checks, compensation, job descriptions, org charts, unemployment claims, verification of employment, grievances from employees and parents, investigations, counseling, disciplinary actions, risk management, workers' comp, OSHA reporting, FMLA, paid parental leave, teacher licensure, tenure, experience, and loan forgiveness. After he gets all that done in his free time, he enjoys golf, hiking, cycling, woodworking, and adventure travel. I think y'all will find Mr. Ott does an outstanding job, has a great resume, and he's going to share the fruit of the work that he and his committee have done this year.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, board members, for having me back for yet another presentation concerning our compensation work that we have done and the committee that I've led, and we'll get into that in just a second. But let me just begin by saying that the team that was part of compensation last year, this year, a lot of the members came back for year 2, and there was a lot of robust conversation, of course, that was had, just like last year, and we touched on many topics, and we're going to get into some of those topics again. But for all the new board members this year, I want to step back to some of the work that we did last year so you have some context around really what led us to this point today, right? Because I think that's important for you to know, and we'll get into all of that. But this first slide really, it says it all. It's one small step for man and one giant leap for Sumner County Schools, because that's really what happened last year. Around the same time, ironically, is when I made that presentation. So let's get into this. So again, Sumner County Schools is the largest employer in Sumner County. We had a long journey. We spent about 3 months collectively as a team to get through this study. Again, going over a variety of different topics because there was many things that we had to talk about. So let me take you back to 1995, kind of where, when I first was here in 2003, I kind of discovered that there was a study that was done. There was a lot of work around that study, and it was all led by this management partners and Mr. Larry Slosher. His name was on every document that I ever read. This was a study that was that the board approved and then ultimately voted on and approved. Job descriptions, wage scales, how we were going to compensate our classified employees, etc. So from there, we've been working off this same model since 1995. Really no change. So for 29 years. So fast forward to last year, and we basically had a huge paradigm shift in what we were going to do as far as compensation was concerned. And then this year, we just wanted to reevaluate again what we had accomplished, and then were there any tweaks that we had to do. Okay. So we really went from this chaos to order in our compensation schemes. All new brand new job descriptions, org charts, scales, how we were going to appropriate money to different employees within the district, a lot of alignment to scales, things like that. So again, like I said, after 29 years, it was well time for a refresh. Here's the makeup of the team. Again, like I said before, the team was, for the most part, the same members. We had a couple of people drop off, and then we added some new members to replace them. But this is the makeup of the team. You'll see a athletic compensation committee there too, that was part of the athletic work and supplements that we did for coaches. And so all that work is on the Sumner County website. If you ever want to go and look at how we pay people, that's on the Sumner County website under staffing or under the HR department under wage scales. It's all there. All right, so the committee's objectives were to really, again, take a deep dive at compensation rates and supplements and scales, ensure fair and equitable pay practices for all the employees, establish new minimum rates of pay, look at identify positions that were not only hard to fill but also highly qualified. So in other words, those like mechanics, you just can't find mechanics. Some technology positions, you can't find those positions or people to fill those positions. Really take a deep dive on analyzing our turnover and days to fill metrics, identify employees that didn't have established pay structures. So there were some employees that we didn't have established pay structures for. Again, update the athletic supplements and then ensure compliance with new FSLA regulations, and then keep fair and equitable incentives throughout the district. So a lot of you had input on the board policies that we updated. There were 4 of them. We increased wages to be competitive in the workforce and labor, clarified employee compensation rules, updated pay policies and accrual rules, approved the new pay structures for this school year, established new pay scales, and then we communicated it all to employees. And you'll see some of the reactions from the employees that we got as part of this presentation. Pretty powerful stuff. So again, we're going to look back at from 2009 to 23 and how we actually paid employees during that time. This chart is I saw it back in 2003, and then I saw it when I came back in 2022. But it really paints a picture across both sectors of employees that we have, both the exempt employees and the non-exempt employees. The ones in red are particular of note because those are the classified employees that did not receive a raise during those periods of time. So certified employees receive a pay increase by law every single year. It's the classified employees that there's no law governing them to get a raise every single year. So out of the last 11 of 15 years, they never received a raise. Or I'm sorry, they did. But there were years in there where they did not receive a raise. So what's required under Tennessee law? Okay. So let's start with the certified employees first. As you know, there is a state salary scale. And that's state salary scale. You'll see it here in just a second. But basically it says that licensed personnel having more training and experience shall receive more than the established base per school year. In other words, there's a graduated scale based on years of experience and degrees. So this next section addresses the degrees. So if you have a higher degree, you're going to get compensated more. Okay, this is all part of code. So here's the scale that's currently in effect, dated 2023. I looked for an updated scale just recently on the web and I couldn't find one for 2024. So right now the state minimum is $42,000. I don't think you'll find a state or find a school out there right now that's paying $42,000. They're all much higher than that. But anyway, this is what the scale is. And then you probably already know that our governor, Bill Lee, signed on 16th, 2023, that we are going to be at $50,000 by 26-27. So not this coming school year, but the one after, right? And we already know that some schools are at or above $50,000 right now. I'll show you some schools here in just a second. So what's required under the United States Department of Labor? Now this really covers not only exempt employees, but non-exempt employees. So the FSLA employee compensation classifications, basically to be a non-exempt worker, you're entitled to minimum wage, and that's federally set at $7.25 an hour, has not changed. Okay, and there's 25 states that have adopted new minimum wage rates. Tennessee is not one of them. Okay, overtime is after 40 hours a week. In Tennessee, that's true. In California and other states, it could be after 8 hours per day. It could be, even after, it's after 8 hours a day. Like California, they get overtime for anything over 8 hours a day, no matter how many hours they work during the week. So the exemption rules have to do with how many hours a week, and then also there's a threshold for meeting if you work or work all year long and make $35,568 or more. Now there's a lot to the exemption rules, but every employee is basically non-exempt unless you prove them to be an exempt employee. Teachers by law, federal law, are all exempt employees. Okay, classified employees for us are non-exempt employees, right? So unless you make $35,568 and pass other rules to be exempt, right? So there was some recent laws that were adopted by the Department of Labor, and basically they were trying to raise the ceiling on the exemption rule. Okay, but you can see here on November 15th, just recently, last year, at the end of last year, a district court in eastern Tennessee or Texas vacated and set aside those regulations and basically nullified the exemption ceiling that was supposed to go into effect on July 1st at $43,000, $888, and again on January 1st of this year at $58,556. That's been vacated, right? Again, it didn't happen, but that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to raise the ceiling on exemption, which would have taken really employees who were in between that 35 and 43, for example, and would have said, you're going to have to make all of those employees now non-exempt and allow them to get overtime. All right, does that make sense? So, all right. So again, non-exempt versus exempt. FSLA governs all of that under the Department of Labor. It's $7.25 an hour, and it's been in effect since 2009. An exempt employee, the threshold again is $35,568 per year. There's no limit on hours worked. It requires several conditions to be met, depending on the job that you're doing. Okay. So we have, like I said, we have lots of different kinds of employees that work for us in many different job descriptions. We'll talk about that in a second. But we have certificated employees, classroom teachers, nurses, principals, both instructional and SPED leadership, obviously exempt employees. Classified employees, or non-exempt employees. There are two different, some classified employees like myself are exempt. Other employees are non-exempt. So school support staff, central office, support services, bus drivers would be non-exempt. Substitutes, non-faculty, all non-exempt. All right, the number of titles that we have right now, we have 342 different job titles. All right, and 342 different job descriptions. So whenever we do introduce a new, obviously, position, we get a job title, position description, that's posted with the posting, so people know how many hours they're going to work. And the hours can vary. We have some employees that only work 2 hours a day, like in school cafeterias and other areas, or people that work 8 hours a day or more. The number of salary schedules right now, I believe, is 147. And that's quite a few. And that's just based on hours per week and the number of days that they work per year. And then scheduling hours worked in between 190 and 260 days. So obviously our demographic is very diverse. Just to show you that diversity, here's a breakdown of the employee base that we have. So you see the majority of employees, 71%, are full-time. Substitutes make up 15%. Part-time employees make up 7%. Non-faculty would be coaches and other employees that work for us periodically in the buildings, and then retirees. People who are back on House Bill 2783 or have come back on 120 days. I wanted to point this out. This is a brand new slide, but I think there was some misconception about our rates of pay, or for especially our hourly folks. And but anyway, full-time employed is 30 hours a week or more, and this is for benefit purposes, right? It also includes bus drivers and bus assistants that can work a minimum of 4.5-hour days. So those employees also get benefits eligible. Could be as few as 190 days, and teachers are all considered full-time unless they work like a half a day. So we do have some teachers that are job sharing. They'll have a half a day teacher, or they may work a full day for 2.5 days, and then the other teacher would come in and work another 2.5 days to make a full week. Yes?
Mr. Ott, I'm just curious, how many job shares do we have?
Not very many anymore. I want
Well,
to say
It
it's
used to be a thing, and then it kind of went
yeah,
away.
you're right.
I have friends who job shared.
We have
Yeah.
I'd say less than 6 pairs.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. 12. It's less than a dozen. You're right.
A couple of Jack Anderson.
Here's what sometimes a teacher will leave that's in a job share situation,
Sure.
and then the other teacher can't find another person that just wants to work half-time. So it creates a strain. But you're right. Sometimes we do have those. We have job shares.
Does the principal have to approve that? If they want that in their building? I mean,
Oh,
does the principal
definitely.
have to?
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got to want that set up. Yeah, bye.
Yep.
Thank you, just curious.
Yep, good question. So I put this up there for just painting the picture about where our employees were at the time. And this data, I have not updated this data, so this is for 2022. But Tennessee median income for households was 64,035. Sumner County median was 81,883. Population and poverty income, Sumner County population back in 22 was 203,858. It may have changed. I'm not really sure what it is now. And the poverty income in Tennessee with a household of 2 people was 27,214. So here, and I put dates on all this so we're not confused about what it is currently. I want to show you what it is currently versus what it was last year. But this is all last year data. Yes.
So on that, can you go back one
Yeah.
slide? So total population is 203,858. Is that Is that 2,200, is 2022, that's the number of people in poverty below, or with the 20, I'm confused.
No, it's
Okay,
not.
so that was 2022, that's the date, but what, do we know what percentage of our population is considered poverty income?
Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah.
Okay.
In Sumner County, no. Yeah, this was just the Tennessee, overall Tennessee.
I got
This is not Sumner County.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so certificated employees, exempt employees, teachers, principals, nurses, school psychologists, et cetera, 2572. The average age was 43. The mix of male to female was 80-20, and the average yearly salary was 59,540. Again, this was last year. Again, last year, classified employee staff, 2545, about the same number of certified staff. The average age is a little bit higher at 50. Male-female ratio is a little bit different, 72-28, and the average hourly rate was $15.66 back in the time. Again, this is when the starting wage was $12. So that's where this data is coming from. So back in 23, the average hourly rate, again, $14.25, average work days, 995 days, 7-hour days. The average salary was $451. And this is for only employees who are in the lowest ranges that we have on the scale. So for range 11, 12, and 13. So that's why the average hourly rate is a little bit different for these folks as it was for the whole group of non-exempt employees. So, but you'll see here in a second, as you did last year, about where the majority of our folks were at.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Yeah, how many in the lowest grade?
you'll see in a
Oh,
minute.
thank you.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sorry. Good question, though. So we did have a board policy, 5.1103, that really addressed where employees could start on the wage scale and how they progressed onto that wage scale. And you'll see here in just a second the limitations that provided us. Again, this all came out of the 1995 study. So new hires, basically, if you came into the workforce and you didn't have any experience, you started on step 0. Okay? And you can see here on the scale, step 0 is $12 an hour. At the lowest range, which was 11. If you came in with some experience, like 1 to 5 years of experience, or had an associate's degree, you'd be on $12.16. You'd be making 16 cents more per hour than somebody who didn't have any experience, and so on and so forth. Okay. Again, this is based on the 23 schedule, but this was embedded in the board policy. So as you can see here on this next slide, that if you work 7 hours a day for 200 days, and you had no experience, your take-home pay was $16,900. If you had 5 years and a bachelor's or master's degree, you made $17,892, or $1,092 more than somebody with no experience. All right, so how do the wage scales work? Kind of went through this last time again. But basically, if you came in on step 0, the next year we gave a step increase, you would get put on step 1, and so forth and so on throughout the years. This is without adjusting the scale in any manner whatsoever. So if we kept the scale at $12 an hour, you would just progress along the scale. In '79, shortly after the study was done, there were 10 steps on the scale. In '91 it jumped to 19, in 2000 it jumped to 38, and then currently it was at 40 steps. So over the course of your lifetime, 40 years of working, you might be at the highest step. Might. So these are some facts that I put together. 93% of our employees, at the time was about 1,600 non-exempt employees, were below step 21. So the majority of the people were below that midpoint on the scale. And there were really only 104 people that were above that. All right, so here's graphically what we've been talking about. So there are 1,500 employees here that were below that midpoint, and this is all 2023 data. And there were very few people above that. In other words, the majority of the people, were recently hired, right? Or had been with us for, under 21 years. What's that?
When you look at that last slide, to me it looks like we were having a retention problem in this space. Is that accurate to say?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, retention problem, and then also, retention is put in heavily. Yeah. And then here, by ranges, you can see that our lowest three ranges, that 11, 12, 13 that we were talking about, 54% of the employees were in those lowest ranges. So as you move up in ranges, you move up in skill level or position complexity, right? So at the top of the ranges, you had, your tech positions, your mechanics, and some of the other, your foremen in the maintenance departments, your skilled labor in the maintenance department, skilled positions up here at the central office. They were higher ranges, but very few people. The majority of the folks, the attendance clerks, blast assistants, custodians, they were all in the lower ranges. So 54% were down there. All right. And so again, this slide really says 54% of the people were in those first three ranges up to step 4, 0 through 4. All right. So, like I said, turnover, it costs a lot of money. It reduces morale. It's bad for kids because there's no continuity within the school building for who's taking care of them or in the classroom with them. It adds additional stress to other employees. It's a constant churn. There's a lot of effort, when you just churn employees constantly. So it's not good. The positions with the highest turnover, as you guessed. So CDC assistants, custodians, resource assistants, S&P staff, SPED assistants, regular TAs. Again, they're probably in those lowest ranges that we have. Turnover rates, 15% in 22, 23%. Now this is overall, both certified and classified employees. And then non-exempt employees, though, 27%. So there was a quarter of the staff was constantly turning over year after year. Open positions, lots of open positions. We couldn't fill positions, and for a majority of the reasons. But average days were 80, and average time to fill 45. Number of certified positions at the time, we had 62 at the start of school year last year. Okay? We had classified employees that had 132, and for a total of 4% of the workforce. A lot of vacancies. There were a lot of people that were performing multiple jobs in schools just to try and, keep the school clean, or help with bus duty, or we have a principal that was driving a bus. I mean, it was desperate in some cases. So we also looked at those positions that were hard to fill and highly skilled. And we came up with, a group of individuals that, we put into a different sort of a hiring scheme as a result of that. But a lot of these positions, went unfilled for a long period of time. Not months, but in some cases over a year. Here is just a group of positions typical at a high school. So you'll see attendance clerks, guidance clerks, you know, the 1170 would be a range 11, right? Or range 13, or range 16, but you can see the rates of pay that we were offering, and these are all entry-level rates of pay. Again, we were paying $12 an hour back at that time. The important thing on this slide is really that we were being, Taco Bell, Kroger, they were paying much more than what we were back in 22, 23. Our starting rates were obviously just not even competitive for labor at that point in time. And in some cases, they had the ability to pay people on a daily basis, right? There's programs, there's all kinds of companies out there now that allow, you know, payroll to go and process through them, and they can pay people a certain amount of pay. So they were, I couldn't believe it when I rode by a McDonald's one day and it said pay daily. And I said, well, how are they doing that? And I looked into it. So they can pay people daily. So hard to fill positions, again, those positions that were down at the lowest ranges, 11s, 12s, 13s, but then also some additional positions that we had. School nutrition staff and assistant managers we couldn't find. And then highly skilled positions, occupational therapists, social workers, foremen, senior technical crafts, so people in the maintenance departments, people in the transportation department, people who work here at the central office. We label this highly skilled. So we started to look at how we're going to fix this issue about this board policy that we ultimately got changed, and the hiring guidelines. And we came up with, you can see here on this slide, the gray area is what the guidelines used to be and what we moved to. So we now have two different guidelines for regular employees and then highly skilled or highly skilled. Those positions that we're going to give more steps to and fill as a result of their abilities when they come into the workforce and their experience, obviously. And the impact back in 23, you can see here, I just modeled some of the changes. So if somebody came in with 7 years of experience as a resource assistant and they had a bachelor's, they would have started on 1367 under the old guidelines, and now they'd be at $12 or $14.12. So a dramatic difference. All right. So we identified those jobs, obviously, in the private sector that were paying more money, and we presented these to the board. But you can see here, when we were paying $12 for a starting wage, a fuel clerk at Kroger was making $15.50 to start. If you worked at Clarksville Montgomery Schools as a special ed assistant, you were going to start at $18.21. If you were Wise Coaches, so you're a bus driver at $22.50. So lots of difference in rates of pay in the private sector versus Sumner County schools. And it equated to we couldn't find talent to fill our positions. So we proposed back at the time to raise the rates up to $18. Okay. Proposed to start there. We proposed to change this hiring metrics for our non-exempt employees. We proposed to make some changes in our substitute teachers, taking them from the minimum of $75 a day up to $125 a day if you had a retired teacher in Sumner County that had a teaching license, up to $100 a day and $175. All right. Teacher pay changes. So here was what we We were at 45.6 at the time for the 23-24 schedule, and we took it to, what, 47.8. So again, coming back to Bill Lee, he signed the bill taking salaries up to $50,000 by next school year, 26-27. We had proposed back then to raise our teacher salary to $50,000. We ended up at $47.8. We had proposed then to also do R.T. Fisher and special education teachers another $10,000 above what we were paying regular ed teachers, so $60,000. We made a number of different proposals for athletic supplements that really hadn't been changed since 1967. They were I think they were embedded in concrete, or somebody just, I know there was a lot of discussion prior to, but we just couldn't get any traction to change things because they were all tied to teacher salaries, right? The problem was that we weren't able to attract coaches from other districts, based on what we were paying. So we got some changes done. There were a number of different proposals that are on this sheet for supplements, not only for athletic directors and all the coaches within the schools. It's a lot of fine print, I apologize. All right, so there were some accrual changes that we proposed, taking from, and just a couple, from 11 to 25 years, we changed that from 10 to 20, and then from 26 years or beyond, back down to 20 years and beyond. And this is for annual leave or vacation leave. Additional resources required staff. So again, these are all the proposals that we had. $18 was the minimum we set for classified employees, moving from 12 to 18. I know it was a big jump. $50,000 for teachers, $60,000 for SPED teachers and teachers over at R.T. Fisher, increasing supplement or substitute pay in some areas, and then also athletic supplements. All right, so now let's move forward. Let's look and see what we accomplished last year, because I think that's very important. So we took classified salaries to $16, a huge jump that had a huge impact on our employees. We took teacher salaries to $47.8. We took SPED teachers to $10,000 above regular ed teachers to $57.8, and R.T. Fisher's staff to $57.8. Athletic supplements, we increased athletic supplements. We added flag football, choir, cheerleading assistants, dance team, theater, track assistants to the supplement list. We also increased the number of assistant football coaches across all of the different classes. And then we also increased the limit on how much you could earn if you were coaching one of those. So if you had multiple sports, you could make more money. Yes, sir.
Just because I dealt a lot with the cross-country coaches
Yeah.
during my time at Hendersonville, was cross-country included in this too? Did that get approved or was it not approved?
I believe they were always on the list.
But
Yeah.
the increase.
Oh, they got
Okay.
all of them.
Okay.
They got all.
I had two different coaches stop and approach me about that, and so I just wanted to, when I saw that scale, I wanted to make sure. So, cool.
It's on the website. Yeah. Certificated salaries. We took a look at the scales, and we saw some anomalies on the scales, and we smoothed those out or standardized those. School nurses, SPED social workers, crisis social workers, they were all placed on salary bands. Occupational therapists and physical therapists received the $10,000 increase, and then certificated administrative pay supplements were adjusted to reflect the size and preschool students. Several positions were reevaluated from exempt to non-exempt based on those law changes, or from non-exempt to exempt. Okay. So we had to take a look at that because we thought the law was changing, right? Until it got vacated in November. But we had to make changes way back before that point in time. Some of the positions included athletic trainers, network administrators, crisis social workers, etc. Several of the positions changed in hours and days. So school nutrition managers, middle school bookkeepers, custodians, board receptionists changed hours or days. We modified some of those. Classified scale, percentage changes again were standardized across the scale. Ranges 31 through 40 were eliminated because basically those employees made too much money, so they moved over to the exempt side. Substitutes, again, we raised substitute rates by $25 in some cases, like 75 to 100, 100 to 115, 125 to 150. The board changes we've already kind of gone over about how we hired people, and then just some clarifications under the board policies. We changed the accruals there, and then the application for school employment district required clarification. Excuse me, and we made some modifications on that board policy as a result of that. Again, school nutrition managers moved from exempt to non-exempt status, but we reevaluated them based on meals served. So there was a large number of employed school nutrition managers that got a very substantial increase just because they were serving breakfast where other schools weren't serving breakfast. And so the meals that they were actually serving, or the effort that they were actually contributing to in that school cafeteria, was more. And so they obviously they got more money as a result of that. Salary scales were eliminated and positions were consolidated as necessary. So hopefully we reduced some of those scales from 147 down to a more manageable number, but there's still a lot of scales. All right, so let's celebrate now some of the impact that we had as a result of all these changes. And there were a lot of changes. So turnover is down, way down. Sped positions were filled at the start of the school year. Morale is way up as a result of this because people were receiving more money. And we've cut open positions by over 60%. So again, that slide you've already seen before about the impact of turnover and how it is felt by every employee and student. Again, turnover is way down. So again, I put up this slide. This is a benchmark for what we had prior to doing this work. And as you can see here, we went from 150 CDC assistants down to 89. Custodians are still hard to fill because the work is still hard and there's not too many people that want to do custodial work. Resource assistants way down, 103 to 69. School nutrition staff cut in half. SPED assistants more than cut in half, from 55 to 13. These are all openings. Turnover rates you can see here in 2024, 11%. Non-exempt employees went from 27 to 16. So a dramatic shift in turnover and that churn that we were experiencing. Open positions, again, this is in 23, and now 24. So from 80 to 51, and from 45 to 32. Number of open positions for certified, 62 at the start of school, 132, or actually on January 9th, 132, or 4% of the workforce. 30 classified, so cut in half, and then classified down to 56, or 1.6% of the workforce. So the number of SPED positions that we have, and Norma Dan can relate to this, but she was in my office and panicking every day. We had 30 openings at the beginning of the school year, 23, 24. Last year we had 0. So elevating SPED and RT Fisher, I mean, RT Fisher was completely filled. There were no SPED positions available. So that had a dramatic difference by elevating those wages. So let's just talk about the increased morale for just a second, but because we've got several, slides here just to tell you how people felt about it. Here's kind of what the general theme. Single mom of 2 kids in college, I cannot thank the board enough for all they did to make last night happen. They're referring to the compensation presentation that I did and your vote. I just wanted to let you know that I could hardly sleep last night from all the excitement. This raise brings peace to my home. I'm so grateful for the work of the county and where its students and employees come first. Thank you very much for advocating for your employees. You changed so many lives for the better and pushing these much deserved and needed. Thanks for fighting for us on our behalf. Very pleased with the classified staff is getting raises. So this is a certified employee saying this. They earn it too, can't do our jobs without them. So grateful to the work in the county where the students and employees come first. You have changed so many lives for the better by pushing for these much deserved and needed pay rate increases. So you can see our employees really appreciate this. All right. So again, you've seen some of these slides already. This is 23-24. The employee base about the same, $15.66 an hour. The employee base is increased now again due to possibly turnover or unfilled positions. We've gone up in the number of employees on the classified side, but the average hourly rate is also increased to $19.40 an hour from $56 or $15.66. So a big change. Again, from 23-24, the average hourly rate again was $14.25, and the yearly salary was $19,451. Oops, $19.40 is the average hourly rate, and $26.41. $481. So again, our makeup of certified staff, the average yearly rate was $59,540, and now we're at $63,570. This is all teachers, principals, etc. Do you have any questions? Okay, go ahead.
I just want to see, the one glaring thing is custodial staff is not getting more, I guess you're not seeing a lot of people coming forward for custodial. So are y'all having conversations, or what are we doing to look at strategies to not just recruit custodial staff, but we got to get kind of creative here, because that's not, if anything, our custodial staff is getting a lot older. I know from what we use with the parks, a lot of the gym supervisors are the custodial staff at the schools, and they have been there since I was in school. So the reality is, like, those people are not showing up at y'all's office. So what are we going to do? Because looking at that, that's pretty glaring. And obviously, the upkeep and look of our schools matters a lot for those people. So what are we going to do about that?
First of all, the custodians that we have currently are dedicated, individuals and show up every single day and do the work that a lot of people don't work or do. And so we are looking at range changes for them, but we've also have a number of employees that have stepped up just to do, pick up, hours here and there, wherever they can. But we are actively, coming up with strategies to recruit those custodians, because it's still a need area. There's a lot of buildings that are understaffed in custodians.
And I think some of those too, there's a range in those custodial positions. A lot of the ones that are hardest to fill are the 4-hour custodial positions, because, unemployment's under 2%. So coming into work for 4 hours a day is not something that's very appealing to, yet it's very much needed in our schools.
So let's look ahead to what we need to accomplish for this year. just briefly. So we're advocating to take teacher pay to $50,500. We're advocating to take our classified salaries up to $17 from currently at $16. And then we're also advocating to eliminate background check costs for all new employees. So here's the rates that we just surveyed other counties. But go ahead.
We were charging the we've been charging the employees for the background check?
Certificate employees, we were charging $37.15.
Forever.
Forever.
All right, well, he answered my question. I was asking where we are right now, but the next slide shows.
Yeah, this is the current rates in school systems surrounding Sumner County, and then a couple that are like Williamson and Clarksville that are a ways. There's one county between us. So as you can see here, these are the current rates of pay in no particular order, maybe alphabetical. So. You can see Metro works 200, they pay their teachers 201 days, but this is at, I did the math and came up with the 200-day just to equate apples to apples. So if they were paying at 200 days, this is what they would pay. But they actually pay teachers 1 day more than what Sumner County does, 201.
So obviously we're talking about next year and this is this year.
That's correct.
Do we have a projection on what we think these places will, if we compare our number today with these, we're what, right in the middle? Maybe even
We're at
towards
47.8.
Yeah, well, at the end, yeah.
So it's hard because districts approached, we got an initial big bump in TISA. And so like what we've done in Sumner is we've always tried to catch the revenue for a year before we spend it because we're pretty conservative. But then that makes our money go farther on the back end. A lot of school systems jumped out and spent TISA money raising salaries ahead of the curve. So some of them raced to 50,000 first, but I don't know, you know, the hard part about calling that is there's a couple different factors. You like, if you look at our uncertainties that I shared at the start, there's like 4 or 5 things. Some of these districts are going to have 8 to 10 because without getting too deep into it, TISA estimates what a local contribution is and what the state contribution is. We are way above the county required maintenance of effort, I'd say almost double. So when that number goes up on the local contribution like it did last year by 1.3 million, that comes out of the school side of the funding. But if you're in a county, for Rosedale, that sits right around their maintenance of effort that their county gives them is right around that state local ball maintenance of effort. So if that local contribution goes up, that's going to fall on their county commission to make it up. So they're going to basically, like, you know, where our concern is about our increase getting washed out by the economically disadvantaged students, theirs going to get washed out by just the increase of the local contribution. TISA is going to require a lot of small counties around the state to raise taxes. And some of that is because they haven't contributed as much as our county has, obviously, for education, and the legislature wants to make, you know, that there's a fair portion that local government should pay in addition to what the state pays. It shouldn't just be on the state every year to increase the funding to the county. But that's going to hit, so each one of those counties is slightly different. Even like, you can't even really compare Williamson to Sumner. We're probably the 2 most affluent, Williamson, Wilson, and Sumner. So if you look, like, Wilson's got a huge lift. Williamson, though, is barely, like, their reserves are barely over the state minimum required, so it's a little harder for them. At the same time, the cost of living is really, you know, significantly higher in Williamson than it is here. So it's really hard to know exactly what they'll do. Also, our budgeting is on. We'll know what Williamson will do probably in the next month or so. But see, like last year, they got caught by the bench because they announced what their salary was going to be, and then the state changed the TASER changed what was required local versus state. And, you know, where we got hit with 1.3, they got hit with like 2.6 or something like that. So there's a lot of variables in that are hard to call, but you know, it would put us well ahead of the state requirement to be there the following year. Because when the rest of the state gets to 50, we're going to need to be, you know, that much higher than it.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Which county do we compete for talent if you were ranking like 1 and 2?
Well, from working in Metro, I will tell you that there's a lot of teachers in Metro from Sumner County and other counties close to us.
Okay.
Robertson County, I mean, I had somebody in my human resource department, 3 people in my human resource department that worked or lived in Sumner County that were driving to Metro every day. And it's because they pay more.
Okay.
But I think, Ms. Barnes, I think what we would
Say
say
is if you looked at these numbers from 5-6 years ago, Metro would have been somewhere around $7,000 or $8,000 higher than us. So by closing the gap, it creates you're taking on a lot of travel burden
Right.
for not a significant more amount of money. And
Right.
that doesn't even take into account the difference in benefits packages. For instance, some of those counties pay 100% for the individual's insurance, but nothing extra for family. So if you have a family, your insurance would go from, you know, $200 to $1,200, where for our employees, we pay 80% of individual and family. So our family plan is around $425. Also, let me give you all a huge shout out. The number of thanks that I've received from employees about the December, January holiday on health insurance payments has been, I've had dozens and dozens of comments from employees that have wanted me to pass on to y'all the thanks there.
So I'm trying to go back in my mind. What were we? So we're 47.8 last year, or currently. What were we? When did we go up this year?
We were 45.1 the year before. We split the difference between that and 50,000. So we're actually going a little bit higher because we're looking at 50,500, I think was right.
50,500.
Yeah.
That's our goal.
We're basically going to $2,700 more.
And I would say, you know, if some of those concerns that we have in terms of funding, like for instance, I've heard some talk of things that the legislature might do, but we don't make funding decisions based on what might happen in Nashville, because a lot of things can happen. But if some of those things happen, we might be able to go higher and we could come back. That's why I like doing this early, because it lets us build the budget around wanting to do this at a minimum, knowing where we want to get. And then if we get to the end and we got the opportunity to do more, we can.
So we would be a year ahead of the 50,000 minimum. We're going up the same basic starting increase as we went last year, and you know, hopefully with budget we can kind of be that much ahead the next year.
Yeah, it puts us in a good. I mean, you know, we would be up just there. We would be only Davidson would be ahead of us at 50,005. Now, some of those will probably, to Ms. Bridgman, will probably jump a little bit ahead, but I don't think they're going to be able to take. Like, if you look at the cost, Ms. Brown, what is the cost to get? Was it 11 million to go to 50,500?
11 million. 11.7.
11.7. So if you think like Williamson County, for instance, has more teachers than we do, that's going to be a higher jump for them. Those jumps are those districts that jump fast to 50 are going to have a little bit, it's going to be a tougher slog to get.
Well, I know Rutherford has, you know, they had all the construction they have, so I can't imagine that they have, you know, and Robertson, they did a tax increase to get their 50 early, so I don't know. But I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we'll just have to see what everybody else does, but.
And that's where, Mr. Knight, to go back to Ms. Briggs' point earlier, that's where it gets really short. You see, think like just the difference that going from Sumner County to Robertson County, because I believe Robertson County's tax rate is like 303 and ours is $1.42. You know, our penny generates right at 1.2 million. I can't remember what theirs is, but it's significantly less than that. So that's another factor in there, is you got to increase the pennies pretty dramatically to. And if you have a predominantly rural county, adding pennies to the tax rate is not the easiest proposition.
Brittany?
If you didn't adjust the Davidson number, what would it be? What is the actual annual number for them?
It's 52 something.
Yeah, it's 52 something. Yeah.
just one day.
It's just one day, yeah. 52,048. So 5250.
Gas money. For a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They recently went to 201 days. So it's not, it hasn't been within the last few years. So, all right. Background checks. So we talked briefly about background checks. We brought this up during our background check policy review. I know Mr. King brought up why we paying, or why our certificated employees being charged for background checks when classified employees, substitute employees are not being charged, and non-faculty are not being charged.
Before we started doing this in-house, you had to tell new employees that they could go to 3 different places, one being Guns and Leather. Try to explain to someone moving here from a different state that they need to go Guns and Leather to see if they can work in Sumner County schools.
Right.
It was always fun in the HR department.
So because of the churn that we do have for some employees that leave and come back, and it's just this constant revolving door, we have charged in those cases. Now, there is also a law outstanding right now that says, on Tennessee code, that says employees that are employed for 5 years or more, we have to background check them every 5 years. And we have been doing a lot of those. You'll see here in just a second. So, background checks historically, we've had both for new hires and current employees per state law. In 2023 or 23-24, we did 1,700 background checks, all in our office, at $37.15. So some employees were paying those, classified employees didn't, substitutes didn't, non-faculty did not. New state law mandates, this is just brand new, now mandates that instead of having people come in every 5 years, they have to belong to this RAP-BAC program, they call it, RAP BAC, right? It's $50 an employee, and they have to sign up at the time that you originally fingerprint them. So that means it's $87.50 now. Substitutes, non-faculty employees are not part of the RAP-BAC, again, because there's that constant churn. So we elected, if we did have a substitute or a non-faculty employee that stuck with us for a while, that at the 5-year point, we probably wouldn't enroll them in RAP-BAC, but we would just go ahead and fingerprint them again at 5 years. And the state allows us to basically include employees in RAP-BAC or not include, but we have to holistically look at a group of employees. So we chose substitutes and non-faculty as part of that group. So here's our solutions for background checks. Everybody's free the first time. They don't have to pay the $50. They don't have to pay the $37.15, first time. And now if they leave and decide to come back, then they pay. So what's that going to cost us? There's a dollar figure to that too.
So is that,
Yeah.
let's say they leave and come back in 6 months. I mean, is that within the 5? It's within the 5 years, but
It is, but
they would
there's a
still-
lot that can happen in
Sure,
6
I know.
months.
Yeah.
And so we're going to fingerprint you.
and they're going to have to pay. Okay,
Right.
I got you.
It's just to try and reduce some of that turnover, that we have. And we tell employees when they leave, if you decide to come back, the grass is not greener somewhere else, and you want to come back.
I give you the classic example. This isn't in school, but the prison in Trousdale County for a while raised pay, and it looked real glamorous with signing bonuses and everything like that. We had a whole bunch of people left Sumner County. Then realized the benefits were not good, the hours you didn't have control over, so most of them came back. So, this gives you a little bit of an incentive to not jump at something that looks better without doing some digging and finding out if it's really comparable. because you know, what's not measured in any of this beyond our insurance and everything else is our one-to-one clinics, the utilization of our one-to-one clinics, and the quality of life that's bringing for all of our employees is really off the charts good. And so that doesn't cost anything. Like you can go to, I mean, other than just if you get a prescription, it costs you $5 or something like that. So that it not only saves us money, but it also increases the health of our employees, and it's great for all of our, because before we had a lot, and especially when our pay was around 12, on average, you know, we had employees that had access to great insurance but couldn't afford it because of the hourly rate. But the one-to-one clinics with the raises and things like that are really making a big dent in, especially preventative long-term care with diabetes and things like that.
So teacher pay, the 50,500 would be 11,700,000. The classified pay increase that we're proposing would be an additional $4 million. And then background checks would be $68,000.
Are we doing those in-house now? Or, I know we're not doing all of them in-house.
Background checks?
Yeah.
In-house, in my office,
All of them?
all of them.
When did that start?
When did that start?
Yeah.
About 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But they still have to go get somewhere else to get a fingerprint?
They did. I mean, they could go somewhere else. I remember when in '03, when I was here before, we did them in human resources. So, but they also had the option to take. There's a ORI number that the state issues, and they could take them to Guns and Letter as long as they gave them our ORI number. They could get background check there, and then we would get the results.
So if they go, I know we're offering it free here. If somebody's like wanting to be a custodian in Portland, do they have to come down to Gallatin to see her to get the free one, or are we doing it? You know,
They would.
Can we do any kind of deal with any of the places where we reimburse them, or?
They have to come in here for orientation anyway.
Yeah, they've got to come in for orientation and for a badge and, you know, get benefits information and things like that. So, and submit their I-9, their proper legal documents to work in the United States. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to see if you can go back a couple of slides.
Sure.
You said, so 11.7 would bring certified up to 50,500. Okay. And then 4 million would bring up to 17.
Classified to 17.
Pay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, last year when you gave this presentation,
Yeah.
you called out that we really need to get our classified staff to 18. We got to 16 last year with the hope that we could get to 18 this year. If we're going up $1, it'd be 4 million. So would that be another 4 million to get us to 18? And how do we do that?
I'd have to remember, but approximately, I mean, there's some math that extrapolates, but it'd be close.
It'd be close. So.
So it's something that we can talk about.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, we always want to go as high as we can, because as you can see, you know,
Still
the
need it.
substantial jump that we saw, I mean, we're already much more competitive in the turnover. You know, I made a note that if you think the turnover was around 27% prior to this, so, and most of those were felt at the school level. So if you think about it, like basically every 4 years you were turning over your complete classified staff in the school on average.
Do you have a number that our turnover cost us? Because you know, we went down 11%.
Yeah, not with me, I'm sorry.
Okay. 'Cause
Yeah,
I would
but I have
think
looked
that's
at
a significant savings.
Oh, significant savings, yeah.
So
It
maybe
just
that-
allows us to do other things within the office.
like get us to 18.
I'm not sure if there's that much savings, but about what turnover costs.
Oh,
But,
no,
yeah.
no. Sorry. No.
Yeah.
I can answer that for sure. No.
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah.
We're safe as
Really the toll, I mean, there is $1, you can equate to $1 cost of turnover. But it's really the toll on the other employees that are picking up the slack in a lot of cases, or doing multiple jobs. And then if you look at the multiple jobs that they are doing, you know, in some cases they're getting overtime for that. So that negates that savings that you're gonna have, because the actual cost is gonna be higher.
Are you setting within your department KPIs around like days to fill, turnover, and can you share those if you do?
or days to fill, for
Yep.
positions?
Like the goal. What is the goal to get to for days to fill? What is the goal to get to for turnover? Do we have that set?
Well, my goal is always to be under 30 days or less. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the position, right? And what our current, days to fill. Custodians is much higher because just sourcing custodians is a lot higher. But I would love to fill positions, especially certified teachers, and get them into classrooms as quickly as possible. So.
What
yeah.
about turnover? What's our goal for turnover?
So depending on, I mean, we look at it holistically for the entire organization. We're separating it out in between certified and classified. And then you can even get granular as far as the position. So I don't have that with me again,
Okay.
but yeah.
I think that, what I would say is exciting for me, because I think one of the things that he mentioned just a second ago was about burnout, and how that contributed to job satisfaction, morale, other increased turnover just because people were covering 2 or 3 jobs. So I think just compensation alone, so that, but 48.8% of our new teachers last year were Teach Sumner job embedded in different varieties. And I want to really commend this team because they've been working hard all year. Their districts have been doing, like, I started in one of those programs in 1999, in one of the first ones they had in the country, because Atlanta had a teaching shortage before anybody else did. We were thrown to the grist mill. Like, here's your key, there's your classroom, good luck. And most of us washed out, some in a matter of weeks. Our retention rate in our Teach Sumner program is really high, and they're working like, what do we need to do to not only support new teachers, but what do we need to do to support instructional coaches, to support principals? And so that part is not included in this. It will come later with budget. These are the big rocks that we have to get in, and then we're going to fill them in with smaller rocks so that we can support. Because we don't want Teach Sumner or our programs for job embedded teachers to just be where, hey, we got to go recruit 100 new teachers this year, knowing we're going to lose 85 of them the following year. We want to see that as close to 100% as possible. And I don't know, Dr. Alexander had a number on that. I believe it was around 89-90% of retention, which is extraordinarily high. We've been, we're part of leadership, Forward Sumner, which is the economic development part of Sumner County. And Ms. Skinner and I were at a meeting. We just happened to be sitting next to the HR director at TriStar Hendersonville. And he was sharing some things that they're doing that we're going to try to get access for, talk to Mr. Ott about. But, one of the things that they were saying is contact with employees in the first 3 months is vital. So I think that, some of the things that we're doing is, what do we do beyond just pay and compensation and things like that to let new employees know that they're valued? And they put together, we'll celebrate this a little longer, they completely reworked the way that we do new teacher orientation so that they have opportunities to get some training on the basic things that we do, right? Because you don't need to necessarily know Horace Mann's theory on education when you're starting as a new teacher. You need to know where the bathroom is, the copy machine, your keys, who do I eat lunch with, when do I go to lunch, where do I go? Those things are important, and they've really built out a strong system to give teachers what they need to be successful instructionally, but also to understand all the different processes that make a school function, because it's complicated.
I'm just curious if we're looking at any, or is there any active effort to look for efficiencies or options or to alleviate some of these things with any of these specific groups?
Every day.
Do you have
I mean,
any-
really,
are there
that's,
any-
that's from an operational side. I mean, from an HR perspective,
Yeah.
I look for operating efficiencies every day within my group.
I think, Ms. Ross, we're always looking, at some ways to study to see if we can do things better. I think that, what you always weigh out in our business is that at the end of the day, we're looking at people that work with our kids every day, and there's a value on knowing their name, knowing their background, and things like that. So we try to, there's a trade-off there, and what's the efficiency rate between, outsourcing things versus having our own people, and trying to weigh that out and look and see where we get what's best for financially, but then also what's best for, when we've got 7 or 8 year olds.
But are we an outlier compared to the other counties with some of these things? Is what I guess
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it would depend, like, different school systems, I mean, there's 145 school districts in Tennessee, and there's probably 185 different ways that they do things. I think you will see, like, for instance, a lot of districts that outsourced custodial regretted it with the first run of the way that was done. Now, I know there are different options now that are done differently. School nutrition, some districts have tried to do that. The problem is that there's so much government oversight and so much red tape that it's not really profitable for anybody to come in and do school nutrition unless you're like in a massive, like a metro or something. I don't even think that they outsource school nutrition.
At charter schools, they do.
What's that?
At charter schools, they do.
Yeah, charter schools do, but that's the flip. That's like really small, kind of one-off things. So, it's an interesting question. I would say probably since COVID hit, everybody's been faced with the same dilemma in the private and the public sector, which is there just aren't workers. And trying to get staffed, we're probably in a better position now to look and say, where can we do better and get better, because we're closer. Like if you just look at that slide that showed the number of classified employees from last year to this year, it's up, 600-700 just in terms of what we've been able to fill. Gives us a little bit better of a baseline for what we can do. But I mean, I think we're always looking, because every dollar we can save here, we can put back into either our employees' pockets or into an investment into our kids. But, so yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to say because it's just the way schools are set up with counties and independent school districts, it's just a very different and ranging inside. When I go to my superintendent's meeting, it's the ring counties of Nashville out to like Erin, and you've got school districts of, 1,700 and school districts of 70,000. So it kind of falls all in between. I can say like Metro, for instance, outsourced custodians about 10 or 12 years ago and then moved away from it. Districts outsourced transportation, and then when you had that incident in Chattanooga where the guy had the wreck and killed a couple kids, almost everybody moved away from outsourcing transportation. So it's just kind of there's not a consistent answer. It's not really done on like size of school district or things like that.
And I don't know exactly what efficiencies you're talking about, but there's always discussions every day about like, Jamie, who manages all the custodians. We met the other day about some specific trouble we were having filling with certain positions, combining those. Maybe we will have to pay benefits for that position, but it's a lot better than having overtime by having a lot of other people filling positions. So we're always looking at that. Same thing with like we have mowers. Well, during their off season, they're in our buildings doing maintenance and painting and all these other things. So we're constantly looking at ways to make that more efficient. And like within our custodians, we have some staff that want to pick up additional hours. And so that has been a big lift for us. That's given them some extra money for some extra work, but also kind of filled some of those voids for us. So we're definitely always looking for efficiencies and looking at, reducing, combining positions to make a more effective employee. A lot of school nutrition, we did that this year, trying to make it a more succinct amount of hours, not just all over the board. Same thing with custodians. Jamie was able to eliminate several kind of in between hour positions by combining some different things. So we definitely look at that all the time.
Yeah, and I would say too, like mowing for us would be a classic example. We started off bidding mowing, and the thing we ran into is people would lowball the bid, and then if gas prices went up, they just stopped mowing, or they couldn't keep workers, and it became more efficient and much higher quality for us to have our own mowers. And at first you're saying, well, what are we going to do with our mowers once it gets cold? Well, Andy redeploys them. I mean, they paint, they do wire, they do a bunch of not lower, but just different types of maintenance jobs throughout. So, it's a different setup, but it's worked pretty well for us, because what we were winding up with is most of our mower contracts just walked away 6 or 7 months in, and we had to go through the process of rebidding it or trying to figure out who the second bidder was and things like that. So I don't know if that gets at everything, Mr. Hollis.
I don't want to belabor the point here, but I know, a lot of the stuff is evolved, and I went around and talked
first thing I did, I went and talked to all the principals and a lot of those people, and and I see it, I saw it last night at Merrill Hyde, after the game, the teachers were picking up trash, I guess my thing is, I want to take any burden I can off of the staff, let them teach, and then if there's any options or ideas or efficiencies or whatever there may be, whether it be custodial mowing or kitchen, how you get kitchen, the vendors provide kitchen equipment. I don't know what there is. I'm new to this, but just throwing that out there.
All right. Again, just to kind of put a button on this is, we still are the largest employer in the county, and we do this for the kids, and that's why we're here today. So I appreciate. Let me give another shout out to the committee that helped in this work, not only last year but this year. My team, I couldn't do any of this without them, and I'm really there to serve them and kind of guide people in a certain direction. I'm sure the committee would say that too.
Yeah, and let me give them a huge shout. Some stuff hadn't been done. When things haven't been done in 25, 30 years, it's because when you risk taking the top off of it and start to look at it, it gets, it's very hard to do. And the fact that there are 10,000 fingerprints on this compensation plan last year and this year, and I think it's been very beneficial. And also thankful to the board for the support given. That was a big risk last year to jump in there at $29.3 million. We've never done anything like that as a county, and we're reaping the benefits of that right now. So thank you, Mr. Robb.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is questions for understanding, which is still on the screen. All right. Discussion or action regarding policy 1.2021, board norms upon first reading. I think you all remember during our board retreat, which was back in December. Seems like a long time ago since we were together. One of the things we talked about in the group were things that we'd like to do as a board, how we wanted to treat each other, how we wanted to operate, and just put some ideas around how we wanted meetings to run moving forward. And so we've got the original list that Jeremy sent out, I believe, and is it included here? Do I see it? It's not showing up here. Oh, here it is, sorry. That's listed here. So obviously this is first reading, but we took everyone's ideas, combined them into what we hope will be a policy that we can accept. And so if you want to take some time to look at this, if you have any suggestions, any rewording, please feel free to provide that to me or Mr. Johnson as well. Mr. Johnson, you've got some comments?
Yeah, just a couple of comments is that, one, we took the sheets that you put up, and this is my translation of it as best I could do. If you find something wrong, something missing, just tell us. It is not the intention, unless you guys direct us tonight, for this to be on the January session for a vote. This is for you guys to discuss and then tell us when you're ready to vote on it. So don't feel like it's got first reading down there just to indicate that you've not voted on it yet. But unless you tell us otherwise, we do not intend for this to be on the January voting session until you feel ready to vote on it. So with that being said, discuss away.
Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chair Jones. Board Member King gave us, were you going to speak to this?
Yeah.
As something that we could, I guess, look through and incorporate if we see that it's not covered in what has been listed in the seven, weren't there seven, Jeremy?
Yeah.
You compiled our work, but these were just additional.
Right. So if you don't mind, I can explain.
Yeah.
So I went and looked at the TSBA's. This is their sample kind of suggested norms or their oath of office that they suggest for school boards, and I just, me personally, I was impressed with quite a few of them, and I thought I'd bring it in to give everybody a copy, just as a reference if we wanted to include some of these. The thing I like is they work with all the school boards in the state, and so these are they're getting feedback from everybody, and these are tried and true, you know, and so I feel like it covers a lot of things. You know, I like how it talks, like if you go 5 or 6, 7 down, maintain a strategic plan for the district that clearly defines success and accountability for the board, the staff, and our students. I like the idea of us having a strategic plan, you know, and then the last few, like if you look down, it says maintain the confidentiality of privileged information, including things shared in executive session. One up above that is work to build trust between and among board members and the superintendent by treating everyone with dignity and respect, even in times of disagreement. I'm going down here. It says recognize that authority rests only with majority decisions of the board and will make no independent commitments to take any independent actions that may compromise the board as a whole. There's just a lot of good things in here. Place the interests of children above all others in every decision that I make. So yeah, I just thought there were a lot of good things in here, and I just wanted to give everybody a copy to maybe think about these as we discuss this. And this is from the TSBA. This is what they suggest, and some of the school boards that now we're affiliated with them, but we use a different. We use Board Docs. They use another platform, but some of their school boards use this as their norms, if you want to call them norms. So feel free to look through them, and check them out. So,
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I would just be interested because on the website, this was created or uploaded in January of 2018. So I would be interested to see what their feedback would be because you're looking at 7 years difference. So I would be interested. Thank you for bringing this. I think this is a great framework for us. But I would be interested to hear from TSBA regarding. I mean, this is 7 years old.
Mr. Johnson.
Okay, so TSBA also has a board member code of conduct policy. So this is the school board member oath of office. They have a board member code of conduct policy. Some of the sample language that we gave you for the workshop was pulled from that policy. We intentionally made the decision, the chairman, vice chairman, intentionally made the decision to not provide you the TSBA policy because we didn't want to skew the water. Like we wanted the board to have a discussion at your board retreat and not work solely off of that policy, but kind of design the ideas yourself. We can certainly email that policy to you guys and look at now kind of after the fact because we've kind of started that work and continuing on that work. But I just wanted to note that there is a different policy that, and I don't know when they adopted it, but I would say that there's probably not a whole lot of difference as far as board rules and codes of conduct because the law hasn't changed that much regarding board rules and codes of conduct. So that's probably why it goes from 2018. There's probably not been a significant change in the law since then.
Yeah.
So, but that's it. That's my 2 cents.
Mainly, my first thing that comes to thought is social media. I mean, I know it's been around, but how we utilize it, especially with board members, we almost all have a Facebook page or we use. I would think that that'd be something we really need to look at is in our terms. I don't know what that vocabulary is, but I think that we need to be really careful that it's our school board pages that we're running. What information, how we interact with constituents. I think that that's something as a board we need to really verify and nail down. What that looks like for us to utilize our social media school board pages, not my personal page. I think that needs to be in writing.
Yeah, and I will say just, to add on to what Mr. Johnson said is we strategically provided bullet points from other codes of conduct and other systems because we wanted to grow organically from within this board. What I've seen in other, boards that I've been on or other groups is you look at it and you're like, oh, this sounds good, we'll just do this. And then you don't own it. It's not yours. You're not invested in it because it's somebody else's words and you just said, yep, that sounds good. So we want to try to make sure that we put something in place that we all embrace and support. So thank you, Mr. King, for providing this information too. So what I would say is we continue to look at this. I'm I'm sorry, I'll jump back to you in just a second.
Yeah, that's good.
Just we continue to look this, we're not voting on it in the January voting session, so if you have ideas, suggestions, verbiage changes, things you'd like to see, Mr. Evans, if you look at social media, you're like, hey, here's something I think would be really good for us to consider. We can continue to revise this over the next couple of meetings to really get it where we want it to be. And I don't worry as much about the wordsmithing of, it's any or all or they or whatever, as much as what's the intention of the or the application of the bullet point of what we adopt. So, I'm sorry, Mr. King.
No, I was going to make one comment about what we have, on what we've got here, number 3. It says, "I will accept the will of the majority vote in all cases and give support to the resulting action." My thought on that is if we are going to talk about rewording, I would maybe reword the second half of that. Give support. That phrase, I would say maybe consider settled, or consider the issue settled, meaning campaigning for that issue is brought to a point of cease. The board votes when the meeting adjourns, that issue is right. But during the meeting, it's there's Robert's rules and there's voting, but once the meeting is adjourned and the decisions have been made, that ought to settle it. And campaigning for that issue is now over. So I think there's a better way we can word that. When it says give support to the resulting action, I think there's sometimes, to me, it's that could be a matter of conscience. It just, because sometimes you may not support something. You may accept the will of the board, but it may not be in terms of a matter of conscience, something you support. But nevertheless, you consider the matter settled. So that would be something I would explore on that one if we're going to keep that.
Absolutely.
So that was one thought I had on that.
Perfect. Anybody else? All right, again, we'll continue to work through this. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I just shared the sample. It's called the Boardsmanship Code of Conduct Policy. That's where we pulled some of the norms that we did use for the TSBA. I shared it with everybody for you guys to look through. If you see anything else you like and you'd like to add to the policy, or if you all read it and go, you know what, we love the TSBA boardsmanship because now the exercise is over. So, if we all go, hey, we love this one, let's adopt it, just let us know. So there you go.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Well, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, sir.